I know this, it's a privilege for us to be able to have Pastor Ray Johnston here. So many of you know him, founding pastor of Bayside Christian Church, Bayside Church up in the Sacramento area. And I was looking this in 1995. That was last century. I just want to point that out. Yeah, it feels like it some days, right? But just church planter, amazing leader, a leader of leaders, an encourager of churches across the globe. And, and I think Ray would agree with this. It's not really about saying, thousands and thousands of people and hundreds of whatever churches. But the fact is, that is how God has used and multiplied his ministry. And we honor that and thank God for that kind of leadership. A creative developer and leader, the founder of the Thriving Churches International and Thriving Churches Communications, and serves on any board that can beg him to serve on, a few strategic choices in his case, and spends his time really as a leader, a friend, and we consider it, I have always considered in my years here to be so privileged that he's a friend of Transformation Ministries. He has been. And there have been so many times over the years when, we would say, hey, Ray, do you have half a day, 2/3 of a day? Could you come on down and hang out with some pastors? Like, of course. And so that's the kind of leader and person that he is. And we're privileged to have him today. And for kind of two things, and the one is the opportunity to have a conversation. I often say there are certain people, I say, if you ever have an opportunity to talk to or listen to this person, fill in the blank, talk, the answer is always yes, do it. Pastor Ray is one of those people, right? And so that's what he's agreed to chat with us, sort of interview type style, and then kind of close us off with the word that God has laid on his heart. So, hey, help me welcome to TM, back to TM, Pastor Ray. Yeah, wherever you want.
Woo. Hey, first of all, hi. How y'all doing? Is anybody here doing well? Good. This is a whole different group of pastors that I'm used to hanging around with. Then, good job.
Liars.
It's funny. It felt similar. The two guys that spoke this morning were phenomenal. Just great. God-honoring content, passionate deliveries, way to go. And I love the fact that you do this short stuff. I do, but they treat you too well, okay? Like, I do all this exponential stuff, okay? And you'll have a TED Talk, and at the first time I did it, I'm going to go over by a few minutes because I'm a pastor, and I'm up there and I'm going over by a couple minutes, and a full band behind me strikes up. Like loud. And I was like, this is like being at the Oscars. So I just went and sat down. So great job this morning. Fun setting.
Yeah, that's true. And so, Ray, really, thank you so much for taking time.
Yeah, by the way, thanks for that nice introduction. It's so great to be overrated.
Yeah. Well, I didn't write the other stuff. I didn't read the other stuff. So I just figured, Lord, sanctify it all. So, hey, so Pastor agreed to, just answer some questions. And again, like I said, man, anytime you get a chance to just ask a question and hear from the wisdom, the experience, and especially driven by the heart that you have, Ray, it's a real blessing. So we have a few questions and just things for you to talk to us about. And here's the first one. Hey, so what is it that you're giving most of your time and attention to these days?
Trying to survive. Is anybody else in the same boat? It's crazy. We'll come back to that in a second. But I want to give you a phrase. Matter of fact, you can write, if you want to take notes, I'm going to dump a ton of content on you. Matter of fact, we may never get to me speaking. We may just do Q&A, okay? You've already heard some incredible communicators. I heard this phrase a while back, and it marked me. It said, living in the land of regret will not lead you to your future. I thought the same thing. Living in the land of regret will not lead to your future. And I remember the days where I walked in and by the way, I'm an old guy, but I'm still in the game. Okay, I remember the days when I walked in and the church was full, and now I walk in and it's not. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? And I'm going, oh man, what? And so I spent a bunch of seasons going, oh, would anybody like to rewind 24 months? Anybody? I'd buy every home I could afford. I'd buy every car I could afford, okay? And I'd put a Trump sign out front of our church, and we'd be full. I'm kidding, kind of.
Lord, help him.
But here's what I want to say is this. Nothing great is going to happen through you until it first happens in you. Nothing great ever happens through somebody until it happens in somebody, which is why this kind of conference, okay, most pastors are too busy to ever go to something like this. Matter of fact, somebody told me one time, a pastor will fly across the country to preach a sermon, but won't walk across the street to listen to one. Which means sometimes the least fed, least inspired people on the planet, the least spiritual people on the planet are people, and I'll just kind of warn you about this as an older pastor. I was off the subject already. As an older pastor, people in ice cream stores lose their appetite for ice cream. People in candy stores lose their appetite for candy. People, sometimes while we're dispensing the things of God, we can lose our appetite for God. Okay? So the fact that you are here doing the kind of stuff you're doing is a really, really great thing. And I hope the day comes where no pastor would ever dare miss this. Okay? Okay, now you want me to answer the first question? Yeah. Okay, good. Here we go.
If the Lord wants you to answer the first question, yeah.
I think he does. Y'all ready? Good, because I'm gonna go after it. And so it's gonna be like drinking from a fire hose. So here we go, okay? I'm giving my time to three things other than my family, okay? Number one is this. It's the word rebuild. Everybody's talking about reopening the Christian church and do we stay online, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. The Christian church in America does not need to be reopened. It needs to be rebuilt better than it ever was before it shut down.
That's
okay?
right.
The Christian church in America, by the way, and this is it's like a gift from God. It is like you couldn't change the church, could you? I mean, just to change by the way, Ty Guy, the only guy I know has two first names. Ty, I cannot imagine how many bullets you've taken to get this done. Okay, you changed the church. Yeah, wouldn't we all be if this was our view? And by the way, the Victorville thing, okay, why would God, David, that was you, right? Why would God send anybody to Victorville? Okay, because they can afford a house there. That's why. So where was I? Oh. What you've taken to, you couldn't change the church, could you? I mean, you couldn't even use the word change. The bullets you took, COVID, shutdown, it's like a gift from God. It is like a reset button. For the first time in 120 years, you can change the Christian church and make it look more like the church in the book of Acts, okay? Because let's admit it, the Christian church wasn't all that great to begin with in America. Matter of fact, I have a list, okay? There are 7 things the Christian church in America was a massive failure at that we need to flip and become great at, okay? For example, number 1, okay? The Christian church has been a consumer-based organization that told people what they wanted to hear instead of what God needed them to hear. Okay, that is a really, really big deal, and that is, in fact, why is that true? What's underneath the movement to throw out what the Bible says about human sexuality? Okay, on one hand, what's underneath the fact that the Christian church has ignored everything the Bible had to say about justice and the poor? Because we have been telling people what they want to hear rather than what they need to hear. Does that make sense? So. Maybe we can get that right because we get to restart and nobody's there anyway, okay? The second one is this. The Christian church in America has been a massive failure at unleashing compassion. My life changed in Newport Beach a few years ago, okay? I was in a living room. I take groups of, if y'all be in one, give me give me something with your name on it. I do leadership roundtables for 36 hours, and we just talk ministry. And I'm there, and I just had one of the pastors lead a morning devotional, and I have never recovered. He got at the book of Acts, and here's how the church in the Bible lived. It says, selling their possessions and goods they gave to anyone who had needs. This guy just goes to a board and he writes up good deeds. The early church started with good deeds. Okay? We don't do that. Anybody sold stuff? And then 2 verses later it says they had favor with God and all the people. Does the American church have favor with people? No, not on its best day. The early church did. We don't. Why? Their good deeds led to good will. The very next verse says, and the Lord added to the number daily those who were being saved, and he just wrote good news, and I started crying in the living room, and I went, like almost all of the 360 churches in America, I've been trying to deliver the good news without good deeds, so there's no goodwill. And at that point, Bayside was the fastest growing church north of LA on the West Coast, and I'm pastoring a massive failure of a church. And it is all my fault. I called our staff together and said, I don't care if it wrecks our church. We will flip this and become a compassion-first church. Matter of fact, one of our pastors, Andrew McCourt from Ireland, I think he's been down there. Andrew was flying in, and an attorney was sitting next to him. And he said, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? And she said, well, I'm moving to a town called Roseville. And he said, oh, I live in Roseville. And she said, oh, that's great. She goes, what do you do? And he said, I pastor a church called Bayside. And she goes, oh, I've heard of you guys. I said, what have you heard? Here's her answer. You're the church that does lots of stuff for lots of people. That would not have been true prior. The Christian, I'll rip through evangelism is not in the DNA of the American church. It is not. The evangelism has never been. The church in America started by people fleeing religious persecution 400 years ago, coming to the U.S., setting up churches for themselves, and 400 years later, the average church is still a group of people set up for themselves. So if your church dares lead people to Christ, you will be labeled as shallow by churches that just want to steal the people you've already led to Christ. Okay? Number 4, the Christian church has been separate from the community. Okay? Jesus said, go into all the world. And they're going, no, we're going to build a fortress and not let anybody in. Okay? Number 5 is this. The Bible has been, I'll come back to this later. The Bible has been ignored. The Bible, folks, can survive being banned and burned and criticized. It has outlasted every critic it's ever had. Here's your Sunday illustration. The French skeptic Voltaire, who you all did read in high school, made this. He said, during my lifetime, the Bible will become extinct. Then he died. True story. On the 50th anniversary of his death, the Geneva Bible Society bought his home and has been printing Bibles in it ever since. Okay? The problem is this. The Bible has been one of two things what it was meant to be both. For a lot of people, the Bible is their message book. It's what they believe and what they teach. Other people, it's their method book. It's how they live. So the theological right, it's their message book that they use to condemn people, but it is not the method book they use to love people. The theological left, it's what they use to love people. It's not what they use to believe and let it determine even things that are politically incorrect to believe. Make sense? This is a once in a 120-year chance to go, why don't we actually let the Bible be the Bible and be the sole authority, okay? Number 6, instead of leading culture, the church has reflected culture. Yeah. The church should lead culture in the area of diversity. Our churches should look more like heaven than the divided states of America, okay? I keep going. Number 7 is this. There's been a complete lack of faith and God-honoring vision in most churches. Like you're going, let's do this. It's not in the budget. Which means that most Christian churches are low expectation people led by a trained seminary to be low expectation pastor. Okay? And what challenged me on this was I read the book about Steve Jobs. Anybody read that thing? It's huge, okay? It was the first half of the book is Steve's being a jerk. Second half of the book is he's still a jerk, but he's an incredible leader. And I went, why do I have an iPhone? Because Steve Jobs believed impossible. I'm reading this book and I'm going, that book's sitting next to this book. Steve Jobs actually believed impossible things were possible. At the same time, the Christian church with the promise of God has stopped believing that. Okay? So number one for me is we are dreaming up going, okay, instead of just reopen, what would it look like to rebuild the Christian church? And what should we rebuild? What's new? What do we take? That sort of thing. Second thing we're giving our time to is asking smart questions. Okay? We're asking, we were talking back there. Nobody lives well or loves well or leads well until they think well. I'm going to say it one more time. Nobody lives well, loves well, or leads well until they think well. So we've been trying to get ahead of this stuff, gather people, and go, let's think about things. For example, in my opinion, with what's going on in America right now, every Christian church should be asking 4 questions. Number one is, we have more visitors than ever. You haven't gotten your back 6 rows back, have you? But we're getting more visitors than ever because people are changing patterns. So question number one is this: what are we doing to attract and love and take great care of every person God sent to us? So what are we doing to actually connect visitors to America? Second is this, okay? What are we doing to increase generosity? Because it went really well, and now in America, it's in slow decline in churches. Now, if anybody pastors in California, would you raise your hand? Okay, keep it up if you had people move out of the state, Christians, on purpose. To Tennessee, Texas, Arizona, Utah, because obviously they don't have the internet there. And we've been challenging people, find me someplace in the Bible where it says things are tough, run away and go somewhere safe. Okay? Those states should be sending missionaries to California. And so we've been asking the question, like, what do we do? Because the old ways of building generosity into people don't work, so we need some new methods and new ways of doing it. And we're trying to be on the cutting edge of that and develop that so we can give it to people. Third thing we're asking is this: families. What do we do to minister to families? Okay. Have you heard the Great Resignation? 4.4 million people quit their jobs 3 months ago in 1 month in America. And there are people now that are afraid the Great Resignation is going to be followed by the Great Separation. And homes are going to break up in record numbers. And I think this is a great shot for our church to go, how do we become the place that strengthens families, heals marriages? And like you're going, if you have a family in our area, you'd be crazy not to come here. We're the ones who care about developing your family, nurturing your family, okay? And there's other stuff on that, so, but that's question one.
Yeah, great. Well, if that's all you got, I mean, we could just pray.
Let's close in prayer.
Hey, so the next two are sort of related, I think. Obviously, last couple of years, crazy.
I love it how you put 2 together.
See how it is. Yeah. It's, I'm a list guy, so we got 8, 9. We're going to get through 9. It's going to be 3 p.m., but we're going to get there. So
yeah, these do good.
Yeah. But, you have entree to so many leaders in churches, which is great. It's a great opportunity. It's a stewardship thing. I know that you feel that way. But what about you, Ray? I mean, you're a pastor and a leader and a pastor to pastor. So how, these last couple of years, what have been some of the biggest struggles for you personally? Kind of a follow-up question. And how are you keeping yourself encouraged in that context?
Is this being taped?
It is. Yes, it is.
It's been wonderful.
The screen could go blank for 5 minutes if need be, technical difficulties. Yeah,
Okay. Leave it on. I'll edit. The last year has been hell on earth, the last 18 months, okay? And I didn't realize how bad it was till I did a pastor's conference in Ireland, and I'm doing all these pastor's conferences here, and every time you talk to a pastor, you're going, how you doing? Oh, I mean, just shot at 20. I go to Ireland, how you doing? Great, mate. Let's go get a Guinness. I mean, and what I realize is they had one pandemic, right? They had one pandemic, okay? They had a health pandemic. We had a health pandemic. We had a racial justice pandemic. We had an election pandemic, the worst in modern history. We had just keep pouring them out. It's just crazy. and so I have been slaughtered. And so by the way, if this is you, I'm okay with this, but every community has had one or more churches where they're going, we're going to defy the governor, okay? I have no problem defying the governor, okay? We're going to defy the governor, but we're going to use language about it, like every community, including ours, including yours, has a church that is going, if your pastor does not have the courage to obey God rather than the governor, if your pastor does not have the courage to tell, well, Pastor Ross says, if your pastor does not have the guts and courage to tell you that if Biden's elected, you will lose your religious freedom, okay? Which I think highly possible. But that language everywhere has basically been pastors telling people what they wanted to hear, what they want to hear, while demeaning other pastors and claiming to be a hero to have courage to tell people what they want to hear, what they already want to hear, okay? And making, now some of you aren't applauding because you're going, that was me. And so that happened in our area, okay? It impacted us and a ton of other churches. And I have a friend of mine, he called me and he said, people are leaving me in record numbers because they're saying, I don't have guts, I don't have courage, and they're going to this Trump place. And I know both pastors. He couldn't carry your Bible. And it's been heartbreaking to see what's happened. And so in my case, I mean, and then the other thing is this. We have the most multicultural church staff in America, okay? 50% of our suburban churches are pastored by African-American leaders because diversity needs to happen at the top, okay? And so all this stuff happens. So that adds another layer into this whole thing, okay? And so I have gotten hammered. My former administrative assistant, who's awesome, okay? Like if she were here, she'd be everybody's best friend, most popular person. She's Jack Hamilton in a dress, okay? She's that cool. And
we don't want to see that. We don't want to see that.
You don't want to visualize that. And she's. I got a letter from her. We get home, and because I've gotten slaughtered. I mean, everybody's got an internet now. Problem is, you have a microphone that was taken away. Everybody else got a keyboard, and I've gotten slaughtered. So I haven't read any of my social media. I have a guy that posts for me, and I haven't read any of it in a year and a half. Okay, I just don't care. Okay, and people have been trained not to tell me. Okay, if it goes DEFCON 10, they call me. And but I've gotten hammered. And so I get home, Carol and I are out on a drive, we get home, and I go, hey, there's a letter from this person. And I go, this is going to be great because, encouragement is rare. She's awesome. I open it up, and it is, I'm leaving the church. You have left the gospel. Here she's, Governor Newsom is obviously your new God. And I signed something to get the guy out of there, okay? And all this stuff. And it's just... And I'm reading this thing, and I got all choked up because I went, if it's so crazy that the nicest, coolest, most supportive person in the world can go nuts, what the heck's going on? Raise your hand if you know exactly what I'm talking about, okay? You can't say anything. Matter of fact, if you're playing lose-lose. Say something, you get slaughtered, and don't say something, and you get slaughtered, okay? Say anything, you get slaughtered, okay? And then, and matter of fact, wear a mask. What? The Bible says we don't have to. So what we've tried to do is go, let the lunatic fringes be the lunatic fringes. They're going to feel really good while they're telling their people what they want to hear, and let's stay with the Bible, but you're getting pounded by both sides. So when we reopen, we said, we'd like you to wear a mask. We have a mask-only section in every service, and we have a section where, sit, do whatever you want, don't wear a mask. And I keep, by the way, it's a huge deal. We got to tell everybody why we're doing everything we're doing. That's the massive change, okay? And so we've said, we are giving you the options you need for a healthy walk with God and a vibrant, thriving life. So If you need it online, we'll deliver it. If you want a mask-only section, we'll deliver that. If you want to have, just come in here and be free without one, we'll have that. You know, does that make sense? We get slaughtered from both sides. You know, wear a mask, I'm leaving the church, and I'm a doctor, I'm leaving the church, you're trying to kill the whole community. Okay, so that's what my last year's been like.
Okay, so
but
maybe now is where we pray.
Watch this. Raise your hand if this has been your last year.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. 3 board members have quit our board. 2 of them far right, 1 of them far left. I actually love our board meetings now.
Yeah.
Can that get edited out? Good.
Yeah. So, but you
didn't plan on being this honest.
Yeah. So it's interesting because one of my favorite books that you've written is The Hope Quotient.
Yes.
And you're like Mike Pate, Mr. Positivity, right? You're like woo all the time. But you didn't answer the second part. So, how have you kept yourself encouraged? You, Ray, the person, encouraged.
Drugs and alcohol. No, I'm kidding. That's Jack.
Okay, let's go with Jack in a dress. Okay, that's gonna look better on the tape.
I want to give you a prescription, and please trust me. Write this down, or it's just 2 words. But please, I'm an old guy. If I could pastor you all, here's the danger zone for you and for me. All of us have 2 things going on in our lives. We have challenges and we have a support level. So you have a challenge level and you have a support level. Everybody got that? Okay? And when your challenge level goes up, and this year it has gone sky high. And every time we think, oh good, it's peaked, it's coming down, Omicron, that sort of thing, okay? Inflation, Texas, has anybody had the people you were praying move? No, okay? So you're never going to get this done. Question 3. So your challenge level has gone sky high, and your support level has gone down. I was just with a pastor, great Southern California church. We spent a bunch of time together. He and his wife, broken-hearted. They're best friends. Raised their kids together. Great people. Their support. Left their church over politics, moved out of Tennessee, and hasn't connected with them since. You all know what that's like. You're going, what in the world? And here's the problem is, all of our challenge levels have gone sky high. All of our support levels have probably dropped. The distance between those 2 things is destructive stress. That causes health problems. It causes mental health problems. It causes massive anxiety, and I can't sleep. It also causes all kinds of crazy behavior. Most affairs on the part of leaders are inappropriate stress relief. They weren't in love with somebody else. Okay, that makes sense? And here's what I would say to you as a pastor, a person, like whatever you have to do, raise your support level, because you got 2 options. You can lower your challenge level, and that's what's really behind the Great Resignation. And the fact that our governor will pay you to not work, okay? But that's what's behind that. And does that make sense? And so the problem is, unless you quit, you're not going to do it, okay? And which means I've got to raise my support level. And in however that happens, even you being here does that, which means there are people you can't spend time with because they're discouraging, and there are people you can't. I'll give you an example. I was the executive pastor. I was the interim pastor at Willow Creek when all this stuff started happening. And with this massive staff blow up, anybody have one of those this year? Okay, and this massive staff blow up, and I'm on the plane flying in to the most challenging church situation in America to be their interim pastor, and I'm choked up on the plane because I'm going, I got to deal with that, and Willow Creek, well, that'll be easy. And I'm going into this setting, and I get a text from a buddy of mine, and this buddy of mine is John Stewart. He's awesome. And he goes, how you doing? I go, man, it's tough. Okay? He texts me, he goes, just bought a ticket. I'm on my way to the airport. I land 2 hours after you do. Come pick me up. Why don't we just hang out and goof off the whole time you're there? He came to every meeting with me. We had a blast. I'm actually teared up on the plane. The flight attendant, are you okay? I'm going, yeah, the food's just really good. And and it was so, I was fine. I've had to do a bunch of stuff to raise my support level. And then I've had to do some things to not listen to things that drag you down. Make sense? One guy actually told me, this is a really good phrase. He said, the key to a lasting ministry is this: let go of bitterness fast. Yeah. Anybody having those imaginary conversations with all these people? Yeah, you win every one, right? While you're driving, huh? And you're going to rehearse it, and it'll kill you, or you release it, usually 10 times before it's gone. So for me, I would beg you, man, figure out what drains you, do less of it, but who supports you, how they support you. Don't do this stuff alone.
Yeah, great. Thanks. It's a good word. Hey, so one of the things that we're leaning hard into here in TM over this next
just get choked up thinking about what you're leaning into. This is awesome.
Yeah, you're so awesome. Can I have some more?
Yeah. I tested positive yesterday, but go for it.
Hey, I've been vaccinated, boosted, and I had COVID, so I'm all good. Give me the water.
That's right. By the way, anybody here been vaccinated? Okay. All right. Democrats. Anybody here been not vaccinated? Okay. Oh, look, he's loud and proud. Okay. I finally had to tell my church. I said, "Look, people, I've had all 3 vaccine shots. I'm an old guy, and but I said I am pro-vaccine, anti-mandate." Now, some of you can tell me afterwards why the 3 vaccines were 666. So, sorry about that. You have a question?
Look, man, 666 is in the Bible, and you said we're going back to the Bible, didn't you, or something like that? Yeah. But no, so we're leaning really intentionally and hard into. The official word, the smart-sounding word is succession.
Yeah.
The reality is, raising up leaders and handing that off. Those of us, who are further on down the road, shouldn't we be thinking about that? How are we thinking about it? How are you thinking about it? And advising others to think about this succession.
That's great. Is anybody here younger than 69? Every hand in here except for Jack. And me, okay? And is Jack here? I got to stop doing this to you. Nah. And I told Jack this a long time ago because, Jack's always like, maybe I should retire, It's like, Christian Eeyore. And I'm going, he's the best I've ever seen at what he does, and he's better than he's ever been, in my opinion. So first thing I would do is this: find an old mentor. You got a bunch around here. There was a guy named Dr. Glenn Cole, pastor of Capital Christian Center in Sacramento. He's the legend in town. For 10 years, he was my mentor, okay? Matter of fact, at 72 years old, he went and became the interim pastor at a church, and they were like, you can't leave. And this church had shrunk to 200. He blew it up to 2,000. I mean, this guy he ran to the tape. We're playing golf one day because he left his church. And I said, why did you leave your church? He's the first time. He said, well, I was 62. I thought I should leave. I said, why? He said, because I was 62. I kept going, okay, where's that in the Bible? And then he said, biggest mistake I've ever made. He said, I should have gone out, got my energy back for a few months, taken a sabbatical, and then went back and killed it for another decade. That's a good thing for some settings and a bad thing for others. Okay? And so I'm spending a lot of time, matter of fact, I was in Cabo last week suffering for Jesus. because I couldn't get to Dana Point. And I was in Cabo, and the first thing that happened was this guy, a megachurch pastor, said, "You owe me a conversation. I want to talk about succession." So I have this conversation all the time. And I said, "You should move on if 3 things have happened. Number 1, if you've lost your fastball. Okay? If you've lost your fastball, and you know what that is, okay? You just kind of lost your fastball. The second thing is this: you should move on if you've lost fresh, big vision for the future, okay? And you can't get it back. I lose that occasionally and then get with God and stuff like this, and it comes back, okay? And third is this: you should leave if you have lost energy. It is if my energy level's lower. And it's weird. I have more energy now for some reason than I did about 10 years ago. But if that goes, but I'm also saying at the same time, like at Bayside, okay? At the same time, I've got to get out of the way to let the next generation of leaders rise. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Which means I've actually got to go, I've got to be secure, not in having a microphone. I've got to be secure in Christ and create a future for my church. Churches, by the way, are upside-down pyramids, okay? And there's one leader, okay? That by nature is an unstable thing, okay? Craig Rochelle gets hit by a bus, it's going to be really interesting, okay? And so a few years ago, I want Bayside to have a long run at this thing. And so we pretty much were like, okay, let's get this thing to where. Now, here's the problem with that. I started that about 10 years ago at Bayside, and I went, I'm not going anywhere. I haven't lost vision, lost passion, but I'm going, I got to have somebody come in here so that there's 2 of us. So if I get hit by a bus, we're fine. And we hire a guy named Kurt Harlow. Anybody heard Kurt? Kurt, great communicator, great guy. Kurt comes in, and I said, we'll split the preaching, but I won't keep Easter and give you Memorial Weekend. You know what I'm talking about, right? And so we do that. And about a year into this thing, a buddy of mine named Kevin goes, he calls me, and Kevin, I've been a friend of this guy, mentor for this guy for 20 years. He went through a brutal, heartbreaking divorce. He's met this great Christian gal. They're getting married. We're all thrilled for this guy. And he calls me, and he goes, hey, man, I just want to thank you for everything. He goes, I just got engaged. I want to give you the date of our wedding. I'm going, this is awesome. I get to do this guy's wedding. And he goes, I want to give you the date to the wedding so you can be there. And I was just called to tell you, hey, ask Kurt to do the wedding. Great job hiring him. I went, Kurt is going back to Memorial Day weekend. I can tell you where I was driving at that exact spot because I thought this is going to be a defining thing. And I went, all leaders have ego. All leaders have ego. How insecure do you have to be to think that 500 people should gather every Sunday morning to hear your thoughts for 30 minutes? All leaders have ego, okay? A counselor told me one time, pastors' ego needs are higher than any group in America except for professional baseball players. All leaders have ego. Would we agree with this? Okay? And all leaders want impact. Would we agree with that? And I pulled over on the road and I went, if I can keep impact above ego, we're going to be fine. If it flips, God's hands off this thing. Make sense? It solved it for me right then. And I went, I need to be his #1 cheering fan and the single last person to ever think to criticize him. And I need to have this guy's back. And then a guy named Andrew McCourt also comes in. And so Kurt's got to go through the same thing with Andrew, which I loved watching. And but people, I haven't preached on Easter or Christmas Eve for 3 years now. And the worst part is this, nobody's complained. So, but the church is much more stable because of it, but I haven't lost my fastball. I'm just doing different stuff. So I'm telling a lot of guys, hey, look, find out what you're also, like, you may not be done with Kingdom of God work.
Yeah, I just want to say that I read on the internet that Pastor Ray doesn't even preach on Easter anymore or Christmas, but I don't know what the deal is on that. So it was a joke, people, come on. He doesn't speak the internet. He doesn't read the internet because criticism.
Do
I need to just draw it out for you?
My friend, the reason that joke didn't land is all of us have been terrified by any internet comment about any of us, right? So,
interwebs is what it's called. Again, hey, I think these two questions could go together about the future of the church, the challenges. I love, what you've said, even what we were in the back, some of the things you were saying. But some of the biggest challenges facing the church in the days ahead, and then kind of related, how do you think ministry is going to need to look different?
Oh, that's good.
For those challenges.
Let me give you 4 challenges that we see because we have these. Okay, number 1 is this: there are political challenges. Would you all agree? I mean, and what do we say, and how do we say it? And so on this, here's the problem. On this one, there are some things we have to say. For example, there are 2 bills right now working their way through California. You aware of this? Kids have to be vaccinated, or they cannot go to public or private schools, and we have a private school with 750 kids. Okay? That's actually working its way through. The even scarier one is, and this is not made up, okay? Kids over, and it's either 9 to 11, somewhere in there, can get vaccinated at school without their parents' permission. Yeah. Now, we've been saying for years at Bayside, most Christians are known for what they're against, not what they're for. That's not a good thing. So we're just like, so this, number 1, this political thing, we're just, matter of fact, steal this if you want. Send me whatever you got. Maybe we'll work on this together. This week we started talking about going, anybody heard the phrase 10-4? 10-4, okay? TEN-4. So we are coming up with a list of 10 things we are for, and we are going to read them at Bayside to let everybody know where we stand without playing politics. So, like, for example, number 1, we are for parents being the ones to determine their children's health and well-being, okay? And therefore, that should not be usurped, which means we will not enforce things that rob parents of their right to be the kids. But yeah, that's something. So challenge number 1 is politics and just making any statement. Number 2 is this: marriages and family. This is a new thing for us. Okay, everything in our church is staffed except for couples. Okay, so like, who's married here? Okay, you married? Okay, kids. Congratulations, expecting. Okay. So if you come to Bayside, if you're a kid, we have a children's pastor. So you get a pastor. If you're a teenager, we got a youth pastor. Okay? If you're divorced, we have a divorce recovery and celebrate recovery thing. You have that. Okay? But if you and your husband come to our church, you don't get a pastor or a ministry to connect with. Okay? Now, if you'll hurry up and get a divorce, then we'll give you one. I set this church up. We staffed all the wrong stuff. Does that make sense? Yes. And so a lot of people are leaving my church. Then you go, well, who's leaving? It's not the kids. It's not the teenagers. It's married couples. Okay? And the American church hasn't staffed that. So we've been strategizing, going, maybe we've been getting this wrong for 400 years. How do we turn that around? Okay? The whole challenge of married couples is a big deal. Third one is this, and this is, you star this one if you take notes: lack of unity. Lack of unity. I have a podcast. It's free. Go get it. It's the Ray Johnston Leadership Podcast. Go get it. Go back about 40 interviews and listen to the one with Henry Cloud. Henry Cloud said it was just genius. But one of the things he said in there, he said this. He said there's only one place in the Bible where God was afraid. And he said it was the Tower of Babel. And he said because they were unifying. And so he zapped them with different languages to create disunity, because God knew if people coalesce and get together, they can make anything happen. The early church, 5 times in the first 5 chapters of the book of Acts, it says they were in one accord. Wasn't talking about a car. And I actually believe this. All these people, like the Spirit of God, which is huge, but when you have the unity that is in the book of Acts, you will have the power that is in the book of Acts. Everybody got that? So that's a big deal. The 4th challenge to the Christian church, and to me, this trumps them all. You ready? That's probably a wrong phrase. More important, okay? Here it is. The biggest challenge is not COVID, it is not culture. It is this: discouraged leaders leading without vision and passion. That's the only real challenge. Our challenge is discouraged leaders leading without vision and passion. We have challenges. Our challenges are nothing compared to the Apostle Paul getting beaten, thrown in jail, and these guys getting killed. Okay? And we're all whining about it because we're Americans. Okay? And so I think the number one challenge is this: it's not them, it's us. So
it's a word, right? Hey, I really would like to know, we would like to know, what do you want to say to the next generation leaders, or the ones that are coming next? What do you want to say to them?
how much time do we have?
Well,
Because I don't want the band to strike up.
yeah. Yeah.
Like, do we have 2 minutes?
Yeah, we stole all their instruments, so we're all good. We're not overtime yet. We have about 7 minutes, and then I do want to ask you to just give us a final thought. So,
good.
But what do you want to say to the next generation? I think it's really, really important.
That's right. No kidding. In conclusion, who here is under 65? Okay, so for all you young leaders, actually, who's under 40? Oh, wait, raise your hand. This is awesome.
Isn't that great?
Great.
That's awesome. Yeah.
One of the things we do, I want you all to come to our Thrive conference, and we will give you an 80% discount if you're under 40. We're going to card you at the door, but get up there. It's in May. Number one, if you're a young leader, the first thing I'd say 3 things. Number one is this: your best years in ministry do not even start until you're 45 years old. They don't start until you're 40. Gordon MacDonald told me that when I was 32 years old. Gordon MacDonald, that's right. Gordon MacDonald told me that when I was 32 years old, because I was 32 years old. Of course, I thought he knew nothing of what he's talking about. But he was exactly right. The line of your experience, the line of people that will listen to you, and the line of your energy, and pretty much your kids around the house, your best years in ministry start at age 45, which means don't burn yourself out. Build a good marriage. Read your Bible. Don't go crazy theologically. Build good habits. Live a healthy, God-honoring life, okay? Because you're in preparation. If you're under 40, you are at least 5 to 10 years away from the start of your best years in ministry. So build a great foundation. Got that? Don't burn yourself out, okay? Number two, second thing I would say is this, is do not get sucked into deconstruction. Okay? I was at the National Pastors Conference every year. Matter of fact, Jack and I were there. We did that panel, and there was a seminar there, and this is like 30-something years ago, and the title of the seminar was Saddleback and Willow Creek are done, what's next? And it was the whole emergent church, which was kind of a left-wing. At one point, there were actually more emergent books than churches, but it was interesting because by the way, you under 40, you're it, man. You are the future of the Christian church, the future of America. Okay, you are going to do one of 2 things. Okay, you are going to lean back and shred everything that has happened, or you are going to lean forward and positively create amazing ministries, okay? And here's what I want to say. Some stuff always works. There are people going, well, what worked then won't work now. That's nonsense. Unleashing compassion worked then, and it'll work now. God-honoring, authentic, hard-hitting, passionate Bible teaching worked then, it'll work now, okay? Reaching kids, all this stuff worked then, it will work now. By the way, your church, whoever wins the kids wins the community, you win all the people, you win the future, okay? This has been a temporary blip where whoever won the Republicans looks like they're winning. Long term, whoever wins the kids wins, okay? And the third thing is just what I said before. Nothing great happens through you until it happens in you, so don't miss this stuff. Don't be too busy to get to these kind of things. Everybody got that? And the last thing I would say is this: don't preach every week, listen to some sermons. Okay? We don't let anybody preach every week at Bayside. It's usually 2 to 3 weeks max, because we want them sitting, listening to sermons instead of just being the ones to deliver it. Okay? So that's
great. Hey, thanks, Pastor Ray. So look, you don't remember it. Pastor, you don't remember this, and I wouldn't expect you to, but every single morning I get a text from Bayside U, and not quite yet, guys. I'm going to ask him to do like 10-minute close. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize, but yeah. Yeah, I told them, lock the instruments up. Which part did you not hear?
But y'all come out here and listen to what I have to say. Never mind.
So, hey, every morning, I get a text, use it like like a little video snippet or something. It's not always you, but it's generated. Yep. So at some point, tell us how we can get that. It was real simple, I remember. It was like a text thing, right?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. This blew up, is all around the world. Goes to, I think, 30-something thousand people every morning. All you have to do, it's easy. Take your phone right now and text the word refuel to 56316. So the text number is, it's John 3:16, JN 316, 56316. Just text the word refuel. You'll get a text back, okay? Every morning at 7 in the morning, okay? If you're anybody youth pastors, okay, good. 2 hours before you're up, you'll get a text. I'm an old youth pastor. You'll get a text, and it is a 3 to 5 minute video, a devotional thing. It goes around the world. I start my day with it. A lot of people listen to it while they're driving to work. People have had their whole church on this kind of thing, and it's basically to get God focused every day. And a lot of pastors are going, there it is for this weekend. That's what, So it's a really cool thing. We pretty much were like, every morning, get people started with that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think you were in a meeting with us as pastors. You mentioned, I asked you about it. And today was how do we restore relationships when we've been hurt? Yeah. So there's just a word on that. So great value. Thank you for that.
Oh,
and
thanks.
As in all things that honor God, you have no clue, I'm sure. So I want to pray. Doug, come pray over Ray. And then please just, for 10 minutes or whatever, not 10 preacher minutes, but 10 minutes.
Can I do that and then pray?
That'd be great. And then after
good.
you
That
pray.
may make a little more. And that way you're not.
When Doug is praying, band, you can come out. Thank you.
Okay. This will be pretty simple. I want to read from you what I think is the most important passage in the entire Bible if you're leading anything right now. Okay. It's Joshua chapter 1. COVID years have been like dog years, right? Every year's felt like 7 years. They had COVID for 40 straight years. 40 years of, I better not go into politics. Here is God's word, because there's another disaster. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, which shook them, the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, and if you all would just receive this from God, if you're leading something, raise your hand. Here it is. Moses, my servant, is dead. Now, and at some point there has to be a now. Okay, you know what I mean? Where you're going, now it's time. Okay, 40 years is done. Now it's time. God's got promised land for me to take people to. It's now. I'm done with the past. I'm letting it go. Listening to your critics is like bobbing for apples in a vat of acid. Stop doing that. Okay. Matter of fact, here's another one. Never listen to criticism from anybody you wouldn't turn to for wisdom. Okay. That'll free you up. Now, let go. So now, let go of the past. Now, then you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place you set your foot. As I promised Moses, your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river Euphrates, the Hittite, all the way across to Victorville. And I love this. Then the Lord showed him the whole land from Gilead to Dan and all of it, et cetera, et cetera. And then the Lord said to him, this is the land I promised an oath to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob when I said, I will give to your descendants. And that's the background for this. And then he goes back into it and he says, no one will be able to stand with you all the days of your life. Stand against you. As I was with Moses, I will be with you. I will never leave you or forsake you. And then here it is. Y'all ready? Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them. He's going, be strong and courageous, because you got to lead. The only way out of this is for leaders to lead. All these strategies somebody's thinking up in some seminary, okay? The only way out of this is leaders lead, okay? And then he says, be strong and courageous because you will lead. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey. Isn't that interesting? The first one is competence, lead. The second one is character, live. Competence will get you in the room. Character will keep you there. And then he says, be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Do not let this book of the law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and you will be successful. And then he goes the third time, he goes, haven't I commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Don't be terrified. Anybody been terrified this year? I'm going to have a hard time sleeping most nights. Don't be terrified. I love this. And don't be discouraged. Discouragement is the anesthetic that the devil uses on you just before he reaches in, carves out your heart, and wrecks your future. Do not be terrified and discouraged. Those are two different things. And then he says, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And the gun goes off, and he grabs these people, and they go to a brand new future for the first time in 40 years. That's our calling, people. It's time for me. It's time for you to rise up and lead. It'll take strength and courage. It's time to lead. And to wrap this up, here's what I want to say. The most discouraging moment for me was, 22 months ago. Remember the day in March? It was Sunday when the world shut down. I'm in Southern California. I was at Southwest Church. We have a Southern California Thrive there. And we had just sold it out on Sunday morning. And then Coachella canceled, tennis tournament canceled. And I realized we got to pull the plug on church, everything. And I got depressed. I was bummed out. I had lost all hope. I was discouraged. I usually bounce back fast. It's kind of embarrassing. I wrote a book on hope, and I had none of it. And I'm in the backyard the next day. I took my Bible and a blank sheet of paper, and I went, okay, God, I need a word. And this is my main COVID learning, and it changed my life. God said to me, quote, if you will let go of discouragement and replace it with dreaming, the world just might be a better place. If you will let go of discouragement and replace it with dreaming, the world just might be a better place. By the way, you can aim that at anything. You can aim that at like a marriage. You can aim it at your church. You can aim it at yourself. You can name it at your health. If you will let go of discouragement, replace it with dreaming, the world just might be a better place. Okay? Which is pretty much exactly Joshua 1. Don't be discouraged. Let it go. And so I went, okay. So I wrote, the Disaster Thrive Conference just canceled. Dream. And I took a pen out, and I actually wrote this down. What if, I went, let's see if this is God we're dealing with. So what if we dreamt up, what if we did the largest ever, completely free, totally online, global, anybody can come for free leadership conference. And I wrote this down. And what if I asked everybody I've always dreamt about asking to speak, and I didn't pay them a dime, so every speaker spoke for free. And what if we raised $1 million to give it to kids at this thing? And what if we did it all 7 weeks from now? What would happen? And I went, okay, God, try that one on for size. So I called our staff together, painted this picture, and we went after it, okay? And everybody we asked to speak said yes, because they were all at home and couldn't travel. And and then what happened is the world blew up, so I went, like 2 weeks before, I went, we need to add a day on race and justice where the conference starts by people just hearing from African-American Christian leaders about their experience and how to heal this country, okay? And so we just, bam, dropped an entire day of just that for the first opening thing. It was awesome. But I'm thinking, nobody's going to come to this thing. Okay, we cut Thrive off at a little over 4,000 people up north, 2,000 people down here. So I went, well, hopefully there's at least a few thousand people on this thing. We set up a whole studio. We got this thing, and somebody slides me a piece of paper after the first session and said, because off camera I said, is anybody here? And then I turned back. Somebody slid me a piece of paper, and here was a piece of paper. They said, right now there are 434,000 distinct devices on this. This is gone, which means there are a minimum of 500,000 people. Watch times are crazy long. People are captivated by this thing. And there are, at this point, 38 countries. Okay? Every state, 38 countries, Victorville. And And it went to places, I mean, it's in Afghanistan, it was in Saudi Arabia, there were people watching from Pakistan, places you're not sending missionaries these days. We were jaw-dropped by this. And I'm sitting on there, and I'm all choked up, because all it did, and by the way, people gave over $1 million as we started doing that kind of stuff. And the reason I'm telling that whole story is this. You don't need 500,000 people at something, okay? My learning was this, though. If I hold on to discouragement, nothing great ever happens. If you will let go of discouragement and replace it with dreaming, the world will become a different place. So will your city, so will your church, so will your relationships. So that was my main COVID learning. So thanks for listening. I think we're over time, but I have no idea. So.